Okay, the meeting is now open, and I'm going to start with the election of the committee chair and acting chair. As Secretary-Treasurer of the Committee of Adjustment, it is my responsibility at the commencement of each new term to preside over the election of a chair from amongst the members. The process to be followed for the election is as follows. I will announce that the floor is open for nominations of the chair. A nomination must be moved and seconded, and the person being nominated must agree to allow their name to stand for election. The floor will remain open until all nominations have been identified. After all the nominations for the position of chair have been identified, I will declare the nominations for that position closed. If more than one person is nominated, I will announce the names of the persons nominated in alphabetical order. I will then call a vote separately for each person nominated. Following the voting, I will declare the person receiving the most votes as being elected. If only one person is nominated, that person is deemed elected by virtue of acclamation. The floor is now open for nominations of the chair. Mr. Telowski?
Thank you, Madam Secretary Treasurer. It'd be my pleasure to nominate Sherry McHale as the chair of the Committee of Adjustment.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Mr. Hardcastle? Okay. I have a motion moved by Michael Telowski and seconded by John Hardcastle to appoint Sherry McHale until such time as a new committee member has been appointed by Town Council. Sherry McHale, do you allow your name to stand for election?
Sorry, I seem to have been muted. Yes, thank you. I'd be honored.
Are there any other nominations for the position of chair? I see none. The nominations for the position of chair are now closed. I am pleased at this time to advise that Sherry McHale has been nominated. I will now call for a vote. May I have a show of hands of all those in favor of this motion? Okay. All those opposed? I see none. Carried. Sherry McHale is hereby appointed chair until such time as a new committee has been appointed by Town Council. Okay, and now we're going to have the floor is open for nominations for the acting chair. Ms. McHale?
It's my pleasure to nominate Mr. Michael Telowski as the second and chair.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? Mr. Hardcastle? I have a motion moved by Sherry McHale and seconded by John Hardcastle to appoint Michael Telowski until such time as a new committee has been appointed by Town Council. Michael Telowski, do you allow your name to stand for election?
I'll be happy to accept the nomination.
Thank you. The nominations for the position, are there any other nominations for the position of acting chair? I see none. The nominations for the position of acting chair are now closed. At this time, I am pleased to advise that Michael Telowski has been nominated. I will now call for a vote. May I have a show of hands of all those in favor of this motion? All those opposed? I see none. Carried. Michael Telowski is hereby appointed acting chair until such time as a new committee has been appointed by Town Council. Okay, we are now going to move on to the appointment of committee secretary-treasurer and assistant secretary-treasurer. And our new chair will move forward with that.
I have a motion to appoint Heather McRae, Secretary Treasurer, Who would like to move the motion? Mr. Hardcastle, thank you. Do I have a second? Mr. Dickey, thank you. Okay, I have a motion moved by Mr. Hardcastle and seconded by Mr. Dickey, that pursuant to subsection 44 -8 of the Planning Act, as Heather McRae be appointed Secretary Treasurer of the Committee of Adjustment for the Town of Oakville until such time as a new Committee of Adjustment has been appointed by Town Council. I will now call for a vote. May I have a show of hands of all those in favor of this motion? All those opposed? The motion is carried. And Ms. Heather McRae is appointed Secretary Treasurer. I will now like a motion to appoint Ms. Jasmina Radomovic, Assistant Secretary Treasurer. Mr. Talowski moves the motion. And who would like the second? Ms. Yu, thank you. I have a motion moved by Mr. Talowski and seconded by Ms. Yu that pursuant to subsection 44-8 of the Planning Act, Ms. Jasmina Radomovic be appointed Assistant Secretary Treasurer of the Committee of Adjustment for the Town of Oakville until such time as a new Committee of Adjustment has been appointed by the Town Council. I will now call for a vote. May I have a show of hands of all those in favor of this motion? Thank you. All those opposed? I see none. The motion is carried, and Ms. Jasmina Radomovic is appointed Assistant Secretary Treasurer. Okay. Now with the commencement of the meeting. Good evening. Tonight's Committee of Adjustment hearing is being held by video conference and live streaming video on the town's live stream webpage at oakville.ca. This is a hearing to consider applications for minor variance and consents held under the authority of the Planning Act. Please keep in mind that the intent of this process is to review the application that is before the committee, listen to the evidence, and then make a decision. This process is not intended to be used to resolve any concerns or disputes that may exist between the town, individuals, or organizations. If a request for a deferral is made and the committee grants such a request, the applicant or authorized agent must contact the Secretary Treasurer to schedule a new hearing date. In order to conduct an effective and efficient electronic hearing, we have adopted the following process. If you are watching the live stream of this hearing on oakville.ca, and if you wish to speak to an item on the agenda, you can call 905-815-6095. Again, that is 905-815-6095. The phone number is also posted on your screen below the live stream page at oakville.ca. Staff will be standing by to take your call. When you call in, staff will ask you for your name, item number that you wish to address, and your telephone number. Further instructions will be provided for you to call back to join the video conference. When the chair of the committee polls for interested parties, we ask you to please press *6 to unmute yourself. The applicant or agent will be given the opportunity to briefly explain to the committee the basis of the application and answer any questions that may arise. A maximum of 5 minutes will be given to this presentation. You will state your name and full name and address for the record, and any submissions beyond the 5 minutes will be at the discretion of the committee. All delegations must also state their full name and address for the record, and a maximum of 5 minutes will be provided for each presentation. All remarks and questions are to be directed to the chair. Any submissions beyond the 5 minutes will be at the discretion of the committee. The applicant or agent will then be provided with a further 5 minutes to respond to comments made by interested parties and answer any questions from the committee members. If the applicant or agent has concerns found in staff report, particularly with any proposed conditions, this will be the opportunity to advise us. The matter will then be taken into committee for a decision, and this will mark the end of all discussion. Any person desiring a notice of decision for any application must provide a written request, preferably through email, to the Secretary Treasurer. Written notice of the committee's decision will be mailed no later than 10 days for minor variances and 15 days for consent applications to the applicant, an agent, and any other person who has filed a written request for such notice. The last day to appeal the decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal will be noted on the decision. Only the applicant, specified persons, or public bodies may appeal the committee's decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal. In November of 2022, Bill 23 legislation, the More Homes Built Faster Act, amended the Planning Act to remove appeal rights for members of the public. If no appeal is received within the prescribed timeframe, the decision of the committee becomes final and binding, and the Secretary Treasurer will then notify the applicant and anyone who received a copy of the decision through written correspondence. People participating in this hearing are to be courteous to and respectful of the members of the committee, town staff, and any other person in attendance of this electronic hearing. Once again, tonight's committee hearing is held by electronic video recording and available for future viewing at oakville.ca. Thank you. We do not have any regrets this evening. First, I would like to welcome the new members of the committee. Some of us have been here before and our faces are recognizable, others are not. So welcome, Ms. Yu and Mr. Dickey. Regrets, we have none. A declaration of pecuniary interest, this will be the time. If you have any pecuniary interest, to declare them. I see none, thank you. Requests for deferral, withdrawal of applications. At this time, I'll be taking deferrals or requests for withdrawals. If you have any concerns with the conditions or staff report and you'd like further time to work on your application and you would like a deferral, this will be the time to request one. Madam Secretary Treasurer, I'll give you a few minutes if there's anyone in attendance who has raised their hand and who would like to ask for a deferral.
I've moved Mr. Jeremy Zegers into the meeting.
Great. Yes, thank you, Chair and Committee.
Good evening, Mr. Zegers. Do you have a camera that you can turn on?
Oh, there we go. Sorry about that.
Very well, thank you.
Yeah, so just would like to request the deferral of applications A055-2023. That is for 252 Tweedsdale Avenue.
Yes, I have you here. Yeah, the staff report had mentioned that you were missing variances. I'm assuming that you requested a deferral to work on the application further before you submit it again.
Yeah, that's correct. We intend to meet the front yard setback, but we will be requesting for a slightly larger garage than permitted.
Okay, very well. Members, I'm in your hands. All those in support of a deferral? Okay, the application, none opposed. The application has been deferred. You'll see the Secretary Treasurer at your earliest convenience.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too.
The Secretary Treasurer, are there any other deferrals or any other callers that are on standby?
I see none at this time.
I just want to clarify something. The *6 to unmute, is that only for the phone callers?
Yes, that is my understanding when they call in. That is what they have to hit themselves to mute and unmute, I believe.
Okay, but that's if they're not part of the video conferencing.
That's
That
correct.
they're
If
only
they're
on
actually
phone call. Okay.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to know if I should mention it again. Okay, so the first item on our agenda is a consent application, B22-14-162-9 at 2400 South Service Road West. And I have Mr. David Nelson here as the agent.
Okay, I've moved Mr. Nelson into the meeting.
Very well, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Nelson.
Good evening, Madam Chair. And first off, I would like to congratulate you on your reappointment as Chair of the Committee.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Madam Chair, for the record, David Nelson, Ruth Victor and Associates, address is 191 Main Street South, Waterdown, Ontario. I'm here on behalf of Roxham Holdings, the corporation that is the holding agency for the Buds family series of automotive dealerships in Oakville. The application we're dealing with this evening is a consent application. Ultimately, the parcel known as 2400 South Service Road West is to be sold to the current tenant in that building, that is the Kia automotive dealership. So parcel A is to be separated from that ownership and attached to the parcel known as 2430 South Service Road West, which is the Subaru dealership that is operating from that particular location. I have read the staff report, Madam Chair, and I wish to commend staff for the very concise and clear reports that were presented on this application and the two variance applications that are associated with the consent application. I note that the application is in conformity with the provincial policy statement. That should be in compliance with the provincial policy statement. It's in conformity with the Place to Grow plan and both the regional official plan and the local official plan. And as noted in the staff report, the application represents good planning. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Are there any questions or items of clarification of Mr. Nelson at this time? We do not have any written letters of support or opposition on hand. Madam Secretary Treasurer, has anyone called in for this application wishing to speak to it?
I see no one at this time.
Very well, then we'll take the matter into committee. Who would like to move a motion? Mr. Talowski, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'll move approval of this consent application, finding it meets the requirements of Section 53 of the Planning Act, satisfied that a plan of subdivision is not necessary in this case, and would make that noting, I'll note for the record that there's no opposition, and would make that approval subject to the conditions contained in Appendix A.
Very well, thank you. Motion is to approve, subject to Appendix A, conditions of approval. All those in support? Okay, all those opposed? Did I miss you, Mr. Dickey? Okay, you're muted. Okay, all right, we'll do this one more time. All those in support? Okay, none opposed, the motion carries, and the consent application has been approved. Mr. Talowski, would you do the honors of moving the variance applications that are attached to this severance?
Certainly. Madam Chair, I'll move CAVA 027-2023 be approved as applied for, finding it meets the test of the Planning Act, given that the primary use of the land is parking and storage of automobiles, and it's going to continue to be that way. I see no impact by the lack of a mid-property landscape strip. And again, note there is no opposition to this application. And given that there's no construction proposed, that this approval would not require any conditions.
Very well. So the motion for CEV 027 of 2023, variance at 2400 South Service Road West is to approve. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed. And then motion for CEV 028 of 2023, the second variance on this application for 2430 South Service Road.
Madam Chair, on similar grounds to the previous variance application, I would move approval of this minor variance, finding it meets the four tests of the Planning Act. I'm not finding there be any impact, and noting again that there's no opposition to this, and again, approval with no conditions.
Very well, thank you, Mr. Talowski. There's no, is there discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed. Okay. Application CAV 053 of 2023 at 2157 Oak Bliss Crescent. Again, that's CAV 053 of 2023 at 2157 Oak Bliss Crescent. I will note that we have 2 emails of opposition from Mr. Aziz Milad and I'm not sure if it's a Mr. or Mrs., so I apologize, Shyam Wadwa. I hope I got that right. Who is the agent? I have Edward Barbanek.
Can you just ask if anybody's here for that to raise their hand?
Sure. Anyone here for application CAV 053 of 2023 at 2157 Oak Bliss Crescent? Please raise your hand and then Secretary Treasurer will move you into the meeting. In the meantime, if you are interested in speaking to this application, please call 905-815-6095. Staff will be standing by to take your call and provide you with further instructions to join the video conferencing.
Okay, I've moved Edward Brabenek into the meeting.
Okay, good evening, Mr. Brabenek. You are muted. Now we are not. Go ahead, sir.
Good evening, committee. My name is, for the record, my name is Edward Brabenek. I am the owner and reside at 2157 Oak Bliss Crescent. And slide 1, this is my house directly in front of you. You can move on to slide 2, please. So the 2 variances that I am requesting are circled on the property survey before you. The bottom right circle is the first number on the variance request report, which is to permit a minimum northerly interior side yard of 0.6 meters with a minimum separation distance of 1.8 meters between detached dwellings on abutting lots of the same zone. And the second variance that I'm requesting is the upper circle to construct a balcony that permits a minimum rear yard setback of 7.2 meters. Next slide, please. This is a photo of my rear property for the second variance request. It just gives everyone an idea of what I plan on doing there in terms of constructing this balcony. It's an older photo, so that hot tub is essentially where the balcony would be. Next slide, please. And so the red area effectively delineates the variance request that I'm looking to obtain. Basically, I'm just extending the extent of my balcony back a foot in order for it to line up with the rear of my house, basically, is the reason. Next slide, please. And then here are some photos on the side of on the north side of my property for the other variance request for the reduction of the interior side yard, the minimum separation distance. Next slide, final slide, please. And so again, the red area indicates the variance request of reducing the 2.4 meter aggregate distance to 1.8 for a total of 2 feet. I feel as though I'm in line with the 4 points as outlined in the committee adjustment letter, and that essentially is my presentation.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Brebnik. Are there any items or questions of the applicant at this time?
No questions on my end, no.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee members to the applicant at this time? Mr. Hardcastle, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm looking to understand whether the applicant has spoken with your adjacent property, neighbors, with respect to this, and what their thoughts are with respect to this matter.
I was able to speak to. Sorry, I guess I should raise my hand again.
No, that's fine. You can go ahead, sir.
Okay. Yeah, so I did talk to my neighbor directly next to me last week, and there was a misunderstanding on his part. He thought actually I was moving my fence over by 2 feet. So it was a misunderstanding on his part. And when I explained to him that basically I'm just coming up to the 2 foot setback on my property, he had no objections. And the gentleman's name is Sham. I forget his last name.
Yes, Sham Waidwa is one of
Yeah,
the,
correct.
yeah.
So he had no objections. It doesn't affect anything on his side of the property. The fence stays as it is. He was just a little confused as to the wording of the variance request, and so I did clarify that with him, and he did not seem to have any issues with that whatsoever. The other person that raised any issues, I was not able to get in touch with them, so I was unsuccessful in that regard.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions or items of clarification? Okay, very well. Madam Secretary General, has anyone called in requesting to speak to this application?
There's no one at this time.
Very well. If there are no further questions from the committee members, we can take the matter into committee. Who would like to move a motion? Mr. Hardcastle, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having undertaken my site visit, having reviewed the written materials, including the written staff report, and having heard the presentation from the applicant, and having reviewed the drawings, I am satisfied that the requested variances conform to the 4 tests of the Act, and that the proposed variances will result in minimal impacts upon the adjacent property owners, and they've been consulted with respect to this matter, and I will therefore put forward a motion of approval. That motion should be subject to 2 general conditions, sort of standard conditions, those being that the proposed addition and cabana will be constructed in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevation drawings dated January 13th, 2023, and the approval will expire within 2 years of the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those support? Okay. The application has been approved, none opposed. Thank you, Mr. Brebnik.
Thank you, committee. Appreciate your time.
Application CAV 054 of 2023 at 15 third line. Again, that's CAV 054 of 2023 at 15 third line.
If anybody is interested, can they please raise their hand? Thank you.
I have Mr. Bill Outred listed here. Mr. Outred or Associates.
Okay, I have moved Mr. Outred into the meeting.
Very well.
Yes,
Good evening, Mr. Outred.
Yeah, we are the agents for the owners for 15 Third Line. For the record, once again, my name is Bill Outred. Address is 2140 Winston Park Drive, Unit number 26, Oakville, Ontario. This is an application for a new single-family detached house at 15 Third Line. The actual house was designed to meet all the zoning requirements. They had, I guess, an initial review with zoning. Basically, the house was designed to be much less coverage-wise, residential floor area-wise, and setback-wise, with the intent of meeting the bylaw. However, through the building permit process, it was determined that this is a corner property because there is a small laneway on the south side of the property. And as a result, basically, it results in 3 variances attributed to the fact that it is considered by zoning terms to be a corner property. The 3 variances are relatively minor, however. The first variance is being driveway width. Can you put the site plan on, please? Jasmina, I think that's the survey would be in the next one. Thank you. It's a relatively minor driveway variance. Basically, a driveway on a corner is required to be 15 meters away from the intersection. Technically, once again, this laneway is, once again considered as a corner property. We are 3.6 meters away from the laneway. Planning in their comments note that obviously there's only, I think, 3 or 4 homes that have access to the laneway, so very little traffic. So really, there's no negative impact by having the driveway 3.6 meters from the laneway in this instance. The second variance actually came up through the zoning review, has no bearing on the corner property, but just the size of the garage, 45 meters being permitted. We're asking for 47.75 meters squared, so very minor. The third item is another item that came up through identification that this is a corner property, requiring a flankage yard of 3.5 meters, whereas we're providing 2.44 meters to the laneway for the house. Obviously, we came through the committee of adjustment. The house was completely designed, all working drawings complete, building permit in. So to redesign it by reducing it a meter didn't make sense. Being that it's just a laneway, it's not technically, in my opinion, still not a corner property. The fourth variance and the last variance also has to do with the fact that the established grade measurement is different because it is on a corner property. Results in a very small height variance, 9.07 meters, whereas 9 meters is required. So once again, I believe all 4 variances in this instance are minor. Just for the committee's interest, our residential floor area here is only 22.61%, 29% being permitted or required. Coverage is 17.16%, 25% required. So, for the most part, the house is well under the other requirements. Just asking for these 4 variances that I believe meet the 4 tests. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Outred. Are there any items of clarifications or questions of Mr. Outred at this time? Okay, I see none. Madam Secretary Treasurer, has anyone called in with interest to speak to this application, or is there anyone in attendance who has interest in speaking to this application?
I see no one at this time.
Very well, then we'll take the matter into committee. Who would like to move a motion? Mr. Dickey, go ahead. You have to unmute yourself. Depends if you're using a tablet or a computer. On a tablet, it'll be on the top right-hand corner. In the computer, I believe it's on the bottom right-hand corner. You have to move your mouse a little for it to pop up. Mr. Hardcastle, do you want to take this? I know you use a computer.
Yes, the unmute is in the bottom left-hand corner. You have to hover over it. It's right below right at the bottom corner. But if you'd like, I could also take the motion.
Okay, I'll give Mr. Dickey a chance to figure it out, and go ahead. You can go ahead with the motion, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Having undertaken my site visit, having reviewed the written materials, including the staff report and the applicant's presentation materials and drawing materials, I'm satisfied that the requested variances conform to the four tests of the Act. Accordingly, I'll put forward a motion of approval. The motion of approval will be subject to 3 conditions, those being that the dwelling be constructed in general accordance with the submitted site plan dated February 14th, 2023, and elevation drawings dated November 9th, 2022, that the drainage concerns be resolved through DEPA 22-117334, currently in process with the Town of Oakville Development Engineering Department, and that the approval will expire within 2 years of the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction.
Very well, thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Is there a discussion on this recommendation?
Just for one moment, I just want to note, Madam Chair, if you could just read out, we did have an email in support of this application.
Yes, sorry, I did miss that. We do have an email of support from Mr. Jamal Hussein. And now it's noted. He is, I don't have to list the address.
Oh, no. I just want it on record that we did receive it, and the committee, I just want the person to know that the committee did receive. So I wanted it on record that we do have it.
We do, and it has. Thank you for that reminder. Okay, back to the motion. The motion on the table is to approve with the set and read conditions. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr.
Have a good night.
Outred. You too. Okay, Mr. Dickey, you found it, so we'll get you on the next one then. You're on the hot seat now.
Oh, gosh.
Okay, the next application is CAV 056 of 2023 at 254 Douglas Avenue. Again, this is CAV 056 of 2023 at 254 Douglas Avenue. If you are interested in this application, please call 905-815-6095. Staff will be standing by to take your call and provide you with further instructions to join the video conference. Ms. Villa, good evening.
Yes, good evening. And congratulations on your re-election, Madam Chair. And
Thank you.
committee. and new members. My name is Emily Vea, and I'm from the Office of John Wilmot Architecting, and I'm here to represent the owners Roman and Tammy Melnick. And before I could start, I'd like to bring your attention to the notice on page 2, please.
The missing variance?
Yes.
Or there's, oh,
And
yes.
no, the corrected variance for that one. If you could look at item number 4. I'd like to amend the application and respectfully ask the committee to accept that amendment. We noticed a minor error at the last minute. And so we would like to change the value of the requested maximum lot coverage to be 29.8%. So there's an additional 0.4%, and it represents an area of 2.35 meters square. And I would respectfully guess that planning would still not have any objections because the lot coverage is an existing condition and that we are seeking to legalize it. And if I could go on with the presentation, there are 3 other variances.
Ms. Via, before you proceed, staff have also flagged a missing height variance.
Okay, I can address
so
that
that's
now. Okay, I can
okay.
address that now. They had calculated the maximum height to be 9.14 meters. And upon closer review of our calculations, it appeared that we indeed miscalculated the height. If you could go to page 4, please. Yeah, thank you. And so without changing the height of our proposed second-story addition, we recalculated the maximum height, but properly taking into account the established grade at the front and the flankage. And from the average grade, the height is determined to be 7.87 meters. And we tried the calculations many times to be sure, and I'm quite relieved that we are still below the maximum permitted.
Okay, well, we'll have to get staff's comments on both those issues. So you do want to proceed with the application tonight versus,
Yes.
Okay, that's fine. I just needed to ask you that before you continue. Go ahead then with your presentation, and then we'll take questions from the committee and staff as well.
If we could go back to page 2, please, to go over the other 3 variances. The first variance is to permit the minimum flankage yard of 1.53. And the second one is to permit a maximum residential floor area ratio of 42.4% and to permit the maximum lot coverage of the existing accessory building to be 7%. The 3 variances are also reflective of existing conditions and that we are proposing to convert a 1.5-story dwelling to a 2-story dwelling. And the surrounding neighborhood contains mainly 1- and 2-story dwellings, and they are all similar in mass and scale. And planning had no objections with the minimum flankage yard, the maximum residential floor area, and the maximum lot coverage of the existing accessory building. And we read the report, and as noted, the application satisfies all 4 tests under the Planning Act, and the variances will result in minimal impact on adjacent neighbors. And so this concludes my presentation. Actually, if I could go back now to page 4 of the application, please, that's the elevation. And just to address again the height. And I think what has happened is that if you could go to page 4, please. Yes, okay, thank you. The drawing that we had submitted earlier, we showed the established grade as being much lower than is shown there. But I don't know if you could zoom in, but if you could see, we show both the established grades for the front and established grade for the flankage. And then you see the average grade, and that average grade brings you up to the top here, and the calculation is 7.87 meters in height. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, very well. Are there any questions or items of clarification of Ms. Via at this time? Mr. Hardcastle, go ahead.
Madam Chair, actually, my question is actually of staff at this point in time.
Yeah, I was going to go to staff next, but go ahead, that's fine.
Okay, and I suspect
You're on the same line as mine.
Yeah, do I understand previously that amendments to applications could be considered on the floor where it was lessening the impact of the variance. I was wondering if staff could weigh in on that and provide us with some direction and understanding with respect to the ability to adjust a variance in an upward direction where it would be more impactful from a numbers perspective.
Go ahead, Ms. McKnight.
Thank you. Yes, through you, Chair. The lot coverage variance being proposed is to permit that existing. So an additional lot coverage of 0.4%. Staff recognize that as being insignificant, and we don't have any concern with the additional lot coverage being proposed through this variance, as it is to legalize that existing.
Okay, very well. Does that satisfy you, Mr. Hardcastle?
If I could, Madam Chair, Ms. Knight, could you just briefly speak to fulfilling the Act requirements for notification and whether we would run afoul of notification requirements, whereas the actual number, notwithstanding that it is recognizing an existing condition, that that the notification requirements for modification would be appropriately addressed, or in other words, would it be consistent with the requirements of the Act from a notification perspective?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Chair. This is an item that I would have to dive into a little bit deeper. So I would suggest if there are concerns that maybe this item be deferred.
So if I may just, I think that's more in what I speak to as Secretary Treasurer. Certainly for public notification, they did receive the original notification. If the committee decides to approve the higher number, perhaps there would be objections, and we won't know that because we didn't give the public the chance to view the higher number, no matter if it's minuscule or huge. I believe the public should be made aware of any changes that increase any of the variances requested for public notice, because we would hate the public to come by, a neighbor, whatever, and say, well, that's not what I received in the mail. How did the committee proceed without notifying the public directly?
Okay, thank you for that clarification. In light of this information, Ms. Villa, I will give you the courtesy to take the deferral. And at that time, you can rectify all the figures as well as deal with the height variance to the satisfaction of the town. Whether it be a calculation error on their part or your part, I guess it'll be fixed at that time.
To you, Madam Chair, thank you for your suggestion. I think we would have to take that deferral then.
Yes, I think that's wise, given the fact that now the members of the public do not have an appeal process. So we have to err on the side of caution with that regard as well, to respect the neighbors and the neighborhood and all their rights as well. Thank you. The motion on the table, or the request on the table, is to defer the application at such time that they're able to rectify any I'm looking for a word and I just lost it. Discrepancies, that's the word. And all those in support. Okay, the application has been deferred, none opposed. Thank you, Ms. Villa.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is CAV 057 of 2023 at 249 Burgundy Drive. Again, that's CAV 057 of 2023 at 249 Burgundy Drive. I have Mr. Kieran here on record. And if you're interested in speaking to this matter, please call 905-815-6095. Staff will be standing by to take your call and provide you with further assistance to join the video conference.
Okay, or raise your hand so I can move you into the meeting.
Mr. Kieran or Associates.
I have moved Mr. Kieran into the meeting.
Good evening, Mr. Kieran.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Joris Kieran. I'm the agent for this application, and my office is located at 11 Bronte Road, Unit 31 in Oakville. I can just jump right into the presentation if that's okay.
Very well, go ahead, sir.
So this application is seeking two variances. One is for an increase in the RFA, residential floor area, and the other one is for the front yard setback reduction. Slide 1 speaks to that front yard setback reduction, and it's fairly straightforward. We're just pulling the house forward to be more in line with the houses on either side. That is for just the streetscape, benefit of the streetscape, but also to increase the available space in the backyard for this particular house and the owners of this house. So it serves those two functions. The setbacks of the adjacent dwellings are shown there to demonstrate what they are and how they compare to what we're asking for. The existing house that is being replaced is set a little further back than typical. So as members are probably aware, the zoning only allows us to come 1 meter forward, and that's why this variance was triggered. So that's the variance for the front yard setback. We'll go to slide 2 now. So we are seeking some increase in floor area, and as I normally do, I just for demonstration, identify on the floor plan where the areas are occurring for the increase. And in this case, on the first floor, we have a breakfast area and then a small office. And then if we go to slide 3, we have just the laundry area, the walk-in closet at the back, and a small ensuite, which is actually buried in the roof. If you look at the front of the house, so not really visible from a massing standpoint. So that's really where the extra square footage is occurring. The dwelling's been designed to be sympathetic, and respectful of massing through the use of roof lines and setting back of upper second story walls and creating a lot of interest and relief in that regard. I also submitted a planning justification, which I'm sure you all have, and I won't go through the whole thing, but just to highlight that as the members are probably aware and saw during the site visit, there's much development on the street, and there have been many variances issued, similar variances issued on the street. So we're more or less in line with what's going on there as far as new development, and also what's been approved previously by this committee. I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Mr. Kieran, there seems to be two variances that are missed according to the staff report. What are your comments on those? There's a maximum width of the driveway and a maximum width of the walkway that seem to be not complying with the zoning bylaw requirements.
Oh, okay. Okay, I did miss that, so I was not aware of that, but that's a fairly common comment we get, and it's fairly easy to address. So we would have done so had we been made aware of it earlier, and if I would have caught it. But so that I'm not too concerned about it. We'll just bring those into compliance, and that won't be an issue.
Okay, if you don't, you're not a stranger to this committee. You know that you'll have to be coming back before this committee. So
Yeah,
if you're
yeah,
happy
but
to proceed, no problem.
yeah, and like I said, we've dealt with these comments before, and we just flip it back and make the adjustment and it complies. So I'm not concerned about it, and we will have it compliant on the formal submission.
Okay, very well. Are there any questions or items of clarifications of Mr. Kieran, Mr. Talowski?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Maybe just to help out Mr. Dickey with his forthcoming motion on this one. Mr. Kieran, based on the last comment, then if committee were to approve this and change the first condition that development proceed in general accordance with plans to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning, because your site plan will have to change, you'd be okay with that?
Yeah, I'd be fine with that.
Thank you.
Could it be written into the approval that it just said subject to the driveway and walkway complying? Just saves us having to go through a formal meeting process with the director.
Does that satisfy planning, Ms. McKnight? How do you feel about that?
Yes, I would, through you, Chair, I would maybe defer to the secretary. Heather or Jasmina, would you have comments on that item?
Yeah, we're not involved in issuance of the conditions. It would
No,
be planning
no, the
or
conditions
committee.
come from you, Ms. McKnight. So
Or the
Mr.
committee.
Talowski suggested that we make it to the satisfaction of the Director of the Planning Services. And typically, then they'd have to comply with any missing variances according to that. But
Yeah.
Mr. Kieran's asking if we subjected to the walkway and driveway complying, would that be acceptable, or you would prefer that it be to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning, which we customarily did?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the clarification. I'm sorry for my misunderstanding there. That would be satisfactory. If we were to include that as a condition in the approval, planning staff would not have a concern with that.
Okay. The plans would still have to change, correct, Mr. Talowski?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The two options on the table are the standard procedure, which is to make the condition, as I suggested, subject to development proceeding in accordance with site plan to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning. I think what Mr. Kieran is asking for is a condition that says development proceeding in accordance with the plans provided February 15th, 2023, subject to the site plan being revised to bring the walkway and driveway into compliance with the zoning bylaw.
Whatever's easier. I just thought maybe that would be easier, but I'm not hard on one or the other. Whatever you guys recommend.
I think Mr. Charles is an approachable person, and this happens quite often to us. So
Yeah, no problem. I've done it before too, so I don't recall it being an issue. So let's just stick with that plan. I'm fine with that.
All right.
Thank you for that, Mr. Kieran. It would be my preference that if Mr. Dickey was so inclined in his forthcoming motion to make the first condition that the proposed dwelling be constructed in general accordance with site plan and elevations to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning.
Yep.
Okay, Mr. Dickey, you're up. Did you get all of that? Or do you need help?
We'll go through it and you can correct me if I, I do the wording wrong on that
I'm
one.
sure you'll be fine.
Based on my review of the owner's application, the site plans and the building elevation and my site visit, together with the planner's report, it is my opinion that the variance is minor and it conforms to the tests under the Planning Act and would have no negative impacts on the neighbors. And I recommend that the application be approved, subject to the following conditions: that the house be built, or the proposed, that the proposed two-story dwelling be constructed in general accordance with the plan dated February 15th, 2013, but revised, recognizing revised such that the driveway and walkway width comply to the zoning bylaw and are to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning. And also that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued for the construction.
Okay.
Can I
I'm
just-
fine with that condition if you just be amendable to removing the date, because the date of the plans
Good
will
idea.
change. That's why.
Okay, good, yes.
So the plans and elevations, and then as you continued it.
Okay, I'm going to read it back because of how
Okay.
it was originally, that the proposed two-story dwelling be constructed in general accordance with the site plan and elevations to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning. That was my understanding of how it was to read. Correct me if I'm wrong. I can absolutely amend it.
It's fine, fine by me.
I think we're okay with it that way. Okay, is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed.
Thank you.
Mr. Kieran.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you, Mr. Talowski. Okay, that was a hard one. Well, you'll get an easier one after that. Okay, so the next one on our agenda is CAV 058 of 2023, and this is the at 335, 345, and 349 Wheat Boom Drive. Again, that's CAV 058 at 2023 at 335, 345, and 349 Wheat Boom Drive. I have an Andrew McLeod here listed. If you're interested in speaking to this application, please call 905-815-6095. Staff will be standing by to take your call and provide you with further assistance to join the video conference. I do have a request to attend from Miss Helen Ying Wang. I don't know if she has called in, the Secretary Treasurer, if we can just keep an eye out for her.
Yes, I will.
Good evening, Mr. McLeod, go ahead.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Hopefully I am the easy one tonight.
Yes.
And hello, committee members as well. Thank you very much. My name is Andrew McLeod. I am the applicant for MC Oak Village GP Inc. My application number is CAVA/058/2023, being located at 335, 345, and 349 Weepham Drive. We are here requesting a minor variance for 4 of the 663 parking spaces within our development, with all 4 parking spaces being located within our underground parking garage, which is located on the next page of the document being shared. The 4 parking spaces include parking spaces 7 and 115 on level A, and parking spaces 40 and 164 on level B. The variance is minor, as the minimum parking width requirement for these spaces is 2.9 meters, with our built spaces being 2.85, 2.87, 2.84, and 2.86 meters wide, respectively. I'm happy to speak to the underground parking plan that was submitted along with our minor variance application, so showing the parking spaces in question. Otherwise, I'm here to answer any questions you may have in the variance we are asking for, and I thank you very much for your time in reviewing my application.
Thank you, Mr. McLeod. Are there any questions or items of clarification of Mr. McLeod at this time? I was just reading the conclusion. I always ask this question when there's issues with parking, that the future owners are going to be notified on in the declaration for the condominium.
Yes, I did see that through the chair. That was a condition of approval, and we have no issue with that condition.
Okay, very well. Are there any questions or items of clarification at this time? Okay, I see none. Has anyone called in with respect to this application, or has Ms. Helen Ying attended as requested?
Not at this time.
Okay. If there's anyone in attendance who would like to speak to this application, please raise your hand and the Secretary Treasurer will invite you into the panel to speak.
And there's no one in attendance that's has their hand raised.
Okay, then we've given ample time for callers and people in attendance to raise their hands. At this time, I'm happy to take the matter into committee. And who would like to move a motion? Go ahead, Mr. Hardcastle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry, I'm having some problems, some technical problems here, and my mouse is not working very well. Bear with me for just a moment here, please. Thank you, Madam Chair. Having undertaken my site visit, having reviewed the written materials, including the staff report, we heard the presentation and comments from the applicant. I am satisfied that the requested variances conform to the 4 tests of the Act. I will put forward a motion to approve, finding that the impacts will be solely contained within the structure and the residence, and that the appropriate conditions can address any concerns with respect to that, and as such that should be subject to 4 conditions, and those conditions being that. One, that the unit 7, 115, 40, and 164 parking spaces be permitted in general accordance with the plans dated December 12th, 2022. That the owner agrees to place a notification in all offers of purchase and sale, or an equivalent, advising prospective purchasers that units 7, 115, 40, and 164 parking spaces are deficient in size and may not be suitable for certain vehicles. That the owner provide confirmation that the condominium declaration has been updated to specifically identify all substandard parking spaces to the satisfaction of the town. and that the approval expires within 2 years of the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? Yeah, I see none. All those in support? The application has been approved, none opposed. Thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you, Madam Chair and council members, you as well.
Okay. Application CAV 059 of 2023 at 69 2nd Street. Again, this is CAV 059 of 2023 at 69 2nd Street. If you're interested in this application, please call 905-815-6095 and staff will be standing by to take your call and provide you with further instructions to join the video conference.
I've moved Terry Martino into the meeting.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Martino. Go ahead, sir.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Terry Martino with Brent Weiss Architect and Associates, and we are the agent for the clients at 69 2nd Street. Proposal seeks to restore as well as add some addition to the Heritage House. The application for variance tonight is to permit additional floor area in the private garage located on the north side of 63.82 square meters, where 45 meters max permitted under the zoning bylaw. As noted in the staff report, we believe that garage is significantly set back from the street. It is broken up into 2 garage doors, and that the additional area is the rear of the garage. The overall garage structure is much lower in height than the existing dwelling. And in our discussions with Heritage Committee members as well, we believe that the garage in no way dominates the streetscape or is in fact bigger than the house. Therefore, the impact on the streetscape is negligible, if any, as well as on the adjacent property. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Martino. We have no submissions from neighbors, whether in support or in opposition. And we recognize that this is a heritage home and a heritage permit will be required. Are there any questions or items of clarification of Mr. Martino at this time? Okay, I see none. Madam Secretary Treasurer, has anyone called in for this application with interest to speak to it? Or if there's anyone in attendance who has raised their hand?
There is no one at this time.
Very well, then we'll take the matter into committee. Who would like to move a motion? Go ahead, Ms. Yu, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have reviewed the application materials and done the site visit based on the presentation materials by the applicant, as well as the staff reports. So I'd like to put the motion forward to approve this proposal, and so because this proposal has met all the 4 tests, so as such, the motion should be like to approve this application. I'm hoping. This is my first time.
Oh, take your time. There are some conditions to read on record.
Exactly.
You can go ahead and do that.
Yeah, thank you. With the following conditions, the owners to obtain a heritage permit for the proposed exterior alterations to the house. The additions be constructed in general accordance with the final approved heritage permit to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning Service, and the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction.
It's very painless. The motion on the table is to approve with the aforementioned red conditions. All those in support, first of all, is there a discussion on this recommendation? Okay, I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed. Thank you, Mr. Martino.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Have a great evening.
You too. Okay. CAV A1, okay, sorry, I lost it for a second. It is a deferred application. CAV 199 of 2022 deferred from November the 29th of 2022 at 1049 Lynbrook Road. Again, that's CAV 199 2022 deferred from the 29th of November of 2022 at 1049 Lynbrook Road. I have letters of support from adjacent neighbors, Mike Pikowski, Jennifer Bergner, Mansour Khan, Chris and Michelle Downing, and Thomas Hastings. Those are read on record. We have received them and they are noted. Anyone who would like to speak to this application, please call 905-815-6095. And staff will be standing by to take your call and provide you with further instructions to join the video conference. I have a Mr. Fernando Lima as the agent, Madam Secretary Treasurer.
If you can ask him to raise his hand so I can move him into the meeting.
Mr. Lima or associates, please raise your hand so that the Secretary Treasurer can invite you to the panel to speak.
Okay, he's been moved into the meeting along with, I believe it's the homeowners.
Hello, good evening, Madam Chair and other members.
Good evening.
My name is Fernando Lima, of Lima Architects. I'm representing the owner of the property, 1049 Lynbrook. We are the agent.
Welcome. Go ahead, sir.
All right. So as you mentioned, this is a deferred application. We back in last year, we had to we revised the design to decrease the height. We are actually asking for 2 minor variances this time. Variance number 1 being the maximum dwelling depth to be 22.85, where the bylaw requires 20 meters. And the second one was the building height, which we request a 9.88, and the bylaw requires 9 meters. This staff report, they didn't have objection for variance number 1. However, they have some concerns with variance number 2, and that's the one I'm going to be focusing my presentation on. Let me just pull up my notes here. So the established grade that's used to determine the height of the building, it's about 1.33 meters from the finished floor. So that gives a disadvantage in terms of the building's already at that height. We decreased the height of the building from last year's application from 10.88 to now 9.88. But we still, to maintain a good ceiling height for the dwelling, we do require this small minor variance. The one of the things I wanted to mention too is that on the report that the staff prepared, they had some concerns with the east side of the building, which is right now it's a house, but it's our understanding that the school to just to the east of that house, which is the Lindbergh School, has purchased their property, and they're going to be turning into a gym or a school facility. As you mentioned, we also have the support of all the adjacent neighbors. Across the street from that house, our property, there's a soccer field, as well as we have larger trees in the property. So we feel that the minimum increase of height won't have that impact on the neighborhood. And as I said, we revised the design, so we don't have any massive roofing or anything like that. Actually, roof are quite shallow. Also on the east side, the height decreased to 3.6 meters, which is the garage side. So I feel that we are in line with the development that's in the area. Yes, so I will kind of like to clarify that point for on the east side of the other property, that maybe the staff was not aware of that purchase of that property. So we don't feel that there will be any negative impact on that east side property. Yeah, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lima. I'm just looking at the letters of support that you have, and I'm trying to figure out the addresses that have provided you with support. Maybe you can just quickly answer the question. Are the properties directly abutting this property, they have signed this support letter?
They did. So the first one is from the principal of that Lindbergh School, which is
yes,
to the
I
east.
see that, Mr. Okay,
Yeah.
Mike, yeah, Pulowski, I see that.
Yeah, and then we have the 430 Copeland Court, and we have 433, which is just adjacent to on the west side. This the next door neighbor to the west. As well as we have 471 Copeland Court, which is just immediately to the rear of our property.
Very well, thank you. Are there any questions or items of clarifications of Mr. Lima at this time? Mr. Dickey, go ahead.
In the owner's letter, he mentions that the existing house is 11 meters tall. Is that accurate? Correct?
It's 11 meters that they measure from the grade at the house, but you have to remember that the way that's officially measured is to an established grade, which said that the property line on the sidewalk. And as I mentioned before, that's about 1.3 meters down. So that gives us that disadvantage of the height.
On the existing, I'm just talking about the existing house, seemed very tall. And
Yes.
if the owner's saying it's 11 meters and you're coming back with only 9.88, the
That's
house
correct.
you're building is going to be shorter in height than the house that's there. Is that a proper interpretation?
That's our understanding, and the owners are here as well. They yeah. So that's our understanding. It's 11 meters, but as I said, it's measured from the grade close to the house, not to the established grade, which will give even graded height.
Okay, thank you.
Well, Mr. Tulowski, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Same issue, but I'm going to approach it from a different way. The existing house has got a prominent, I'll take your word for it, 11-meter central section, but it drops on both sides. But in what you're proposing, even though you're suggesting that the proposed house is shorter, you're actually raising the height for the majority of the house, particularly the west side of the house, and creating what more of a wall effect. So I just wondering why you can't come up with a design that's more in line with the existing house, where you're not creating this large two-story wall over height roof all the way across the entire house other than the garage.
Yeah, we try our best to achieve what you just described. However, my clients have a big family, and they do require that space. But we did try to minimize the impact, and as well as I mentioned before, we decreased the height of the initial design significantly. But even then, we still require this a little bit of the additional height, because it's a house of this magnitude. We need to have some sort of ceiling height that's compatible with the new developments, and we only asking for about 3 feet increase.
So with respect to that, from the drawings, I calculate the main floor has 11-foot ceilings and the second floor has 10-foot ceilings. Is that, and you're saying that that's necessary? Because that seems to be largely what's driving your height variance.
Yeah, basically, this house is about 7,000 square feet. So when you get to this type of size of house, we, it does require a little bit of extra height to be proportion. Like if we all design a 3,000 square foot house, yes, I agree with you. We can keep it at 9 and 10. That's what you see the most. But when you get to this kind of caliber, it will be kind of, odd. You will.
Thank you.
You.
Any other questions or items of clarification? Are these the owners, Mr. Dillon? You would like to address the committee? Go ahead.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for giving us a chance to speak. As Mr. Lima already mentioned about the east side of the house, because I spoke to the principal myself, and that's what he said, that most likely there'll be a gym coming that side. So our house won't be a hindrance in any sort of privacy. And opposite also, it's the St. Mildred School. And we have a lot of big trees actually around the property. So even the other houses, because most of them have their backyards, actually everybody has the backyard touching to our house. And there's a lot of big tree and canopies. So that will not cause any hindrance to their privacy either. But because we are building such a huge house, spending so much money, so that's why we would really like if we can get that little extra height that we are requesting. It would really be appreciated. Yeah, it's only 88 centimeters extra that we are asking, if you would. Thank you.
Any questions or clarifications of the owners? Dwelling depth. How far back is the house set from the front of the streets, from the streetscape? I'm just trying to.
Yeah, I can give the information. It's 18.81 meters.
Okay.
Which is actually beyond the setback. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions? Mr. Dickey, go ahead.
I just wanted to get an understanding. So the house next door to the east has already been bought by the Board of Education, or the deal's pending?
No, they have already bought it and they have rented it. So that's why I went and spoke to the principal personally, and that's why he signed that letter of support, because they said in future we'll be building something, then we need your support. So that's why he signed that.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
I maybe have a question to the planner.
Go ahead.
So in the planning report, you were concerned about the house to the east. Now that you've heard this new information, what's your comment?
Go ahead, Ms. McKnight.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Yes, staff provided comments based on the existing conditions of the neighborhood. So this dwelling is significant in size in comparison to abutting properties, specifically pertaining to the property directly east, as it is 1 story in height and set back significantly more from the front property line. But we do appreciate that action has been taken to reduce the height at the east end of the dwelling where the garage is located. That height is proposed to be 3.35 meters. And I have seen the comments submitted by the owner and understand that I believe it was 5 neighbors have also submitted comments in support. So unfortunately, we're not privy to this information prior to preparing our comments, but this does assist in the decision. And I can see that with neighborhood support, planning staff would take that into consideration and agree with the support of this application.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Has anyone called or raised their hand, Madam Secretary Treasurer, to speak to this application?
There's no one at this time.
Very well, then we'll take the matter into committee. Who would like to move a motion? Mr. Dickey, do you want to give it a go?
Okay. Yeah. Based upon my review of the owner's application, the site plans, the building elevations, and my site visit, together with having regard to the planner's report, but the new information that has come forward with regard to my particular concern is that the neighbor to the east will not be, that house will not be there anymore. It's my opinion that the variance is minor and conforms to the Test Planning Act and would have no negative impact on the neighbors. And I put forth the motion that the application be approved.
Thank you.
subject-
Because it is still your first run, we're going to have to tie it to the two standard conditions, the plans. So we have to get the date of the plans. And I can help you with that if I can zoom in on it.
I didn't see it on our sheet.
Madam Secretary Treasurer, I can't zoom in for some reason. Can you tell us what the plans dated on this application are?
I don't have access to that information right now. Perhaps Mr. Lima could provide that.
Okay, Mr. Lima, I'm looking at them, A1. I just
if
can't
I
see
can help
the
with
date.
that. Okay.
Madam Chair, could I step in and assist in this respect?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Hardcastle, thank you.
Elevation drawings are revision dated January 27th, 2023. And this is in the site plan with the same date.
January 27, 2023.
Correct. Yes.
I would also, I would recommend that we can we just do elevations and site plans submitted with this application to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning? If we approve these variances as they are, let's have a discussion about that. I just want to be sure that we're doing this right.
Okay.
I mean, we still have to go through the motion and see if we all approve it or not. I just want to have the right condition before we pass it for approval or vote on it. Mr. Talowski?
And Madam Chair, I concur with Mr. Hardcastle's assessment that the elevations and site plan are both have the same January date.
Okay. All right, if we're all in agreement, then it'll be subject to elevations and site plan dated January 27, 2023. And the second condition is the standard condition that we normally have, being that approval expires within 2 years from the date of the decision if the building permit has not been issued or the proposed for the proposed construction. Does that sound right to you, Mr. Dickey? Okay.
Yes, that's right. Thank you.
Madam Secretary Treasurer, do you want to read that back to us?
That the proposed dwelling be constructed in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevation drawings and elevation drawings revision dated January 27th, 2023.
Okay, very well. That's the motion that's on the table with the subject conditions. All those in support of this motion?
Madam Chair, discussion?
Yes. Oh, I forgot the discussion. Thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. I've lost my footing today. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? Yes, Mr. Hardcastle, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Notwithstanding my assistance to my colleague, I do have some challenges with this application, particularly the height. This is a very large building. It has architectural elements that are full 2-story. In addition to the height variance, there are some improvements that come from the reconstruction of the building, but generally speaking, the architectural elements and the increased depth combined with the height make this for a very massive building. And I believe that it's out of character with the broader context of the area, and I unfortunately will not be able to support the motion on the floor.
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Talowski?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Similar to Mr. Hardcastle, I'm having difficulty with this application. I know the applicant raised several times that the established grade is below the grade around the house, but that situation applies to every single application we deal with. So I'm not convinced that that is a rationale. Neither am I convinced that the desire for 10 and 11-foot ceiling heights justifies the height variance. In the staff report, staff used the term overpowering facade, and I agree with that. I've been toggling back and forth between the drawings and Google Street View of the existing house and this house, and it's ironic that the height is coming down, but the impact of the facade is getting worse, in my opinion. So I think softer design elements on this house could have helped to mitigate this increase in height, but a combination of a very strong 2-story facade and an increase in height, I just do not believe is desirable or meets the intent.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Talowski. I think that for myself, on paper, if this house was set on a different lot, I would agree with that assessment. But I find that the fact that it's set back from the streetscape quite considerably, and the surrounding areas is the school and other lots adjacent to them, and they have the support of the neighbors. I'm more swayed on the other side of the argument that yes, it is requiring a height variance, but I find that given the surroundings, I don't see it as big of an impact on the immediate neighborhood as you would in a normal scenario without any breakdown in the house. What the word I'm looking for, the elevations and setting them up, stepping them down. That's the word that I'm looking for. So is there any further discussion on this recommendation? Okay, I see none. We'll take the matter into a vote. The motion before us is to approve the application as applied for, with the following conditions, that the elevations and the site plan be in accordance with the site, sorry, that the approval is subject to the proposed construction in general accordance with the elevations and site plan dated January 27th of 2023. And that the standard condition that the approval expires within 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction. All those in support of this motion? Okay, all those opposed? Okay. The application has been approved. 3-2. Have a good evening.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a
Appreciate
good
it.
night.
Have a good
Thank
night.
you.
Bye.
Okay, the last item on our agenda is application CAV 212 of 2022, deferred from January the 25th of 2023 at 402 Bonnie Meadow Road. Again, the CAV 212 of 2022, deferred from January the 25th of 2023 at 402 Bonnie Meadow Road. If you are the agent or applicant, please raise your hand. Okay, there we have Mr. Darren Sandra-Smith.
Good evening.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Good evening. We are before you tonight to present for 3 minor variances, for a single-story side addition. We have some larger side yard on this property, and with the fact that the rear yard and the north side of this property is all parkland, the addition of this side yard or this single-story addition really offers no impact onto any adjacent neighbors. So although we are asking for 2 additional variances for coverage and floor area, the massing is really not impactful on any of the adjacent neighbors. We have, for the previous application prior to deferral, did receive support from 10 of the adjacent neighbors across the street to the south of us and down the crescent. We did defer to add a 3rd variance, which was already present, but I missed, which was the rear yard setback. And that rear yard setback is as a result of the fact that the property line sort of tapers in towards the property. So in conclusion, the 3 variances that we're asking for, I believe, are minor in nature due to the circumstances, the adjacent properties, and the massing of the building itself. I'm open to any questions. Thank you very much.
Are there any questions or items of clarification of Mr. Smith? Okay, I see none. Has anyone called in with respect to this application, Madam Secretary Treasurer?
There's no one at this time.
I do note that there are no written or submissions with support or opposition that have been submitted.
There's no one at this time.
Okay, then we'll take the matter into committee. Go ahead, Mr. Talowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'll move that this application be approved as applied for, finding it meets the test of the Planning Act. Would note there is no objection. I believe that the context of this addition plus the lowering of the roof line will not result in any impacts whatsoever. I would make that approval subject to the proposed addition being constructed in general accordance with the plans dated March 1st, 2023, and that a building permit issues within 2 years.
Thank you, Mr. Talowski. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed. Thank
you very
you
much.
and have a good night.
You as well. Thank you.
Okay. We have minutes to confirm from April the 19th. Mr. Dickey and Ms. Yu were not there. Who would like to move those minutes? Mr. Hardcastle, thank you. And then a motion to adjourn. Mr. Hardcastle, thank you. We are adjourned at 8:46 p.m.